Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm senior literary agent and author Heather Cashman.
I'm author and writing coach Stephanie Bierce.
And I'm author and writing coach Nikki Jacobsmeyer.
Our mission is to nurture and enrich established writers throughout their publishing journeys.
We welcome all genres, age groups, and publishing paths through video podcasts, online webinars, in-person retreats, and more.
We're here to help you conquer your path.
We're here today with author Jodi Feldman, and we're going to talk about incorporating themes and layers into your story. So, Stephanie, will you tell us more about Jodi?
I'd be happy to. I've been privileged to know Jody for a while, and she's just, besides being an award-winning author, she's just a delightful person. She is an award-winning middle grade and young adult author. Jody had early thoughts of working as a treasure hunter, a code breaker, a movie director, and an inventor. Through a series of happenstances, however, she enrolled in Mizzou School of Journalism and discovered she really could write. Her middle grade novel, The Seventh Level, and the Golly Whopper Games series, HarperCollins Green Willow, have appeared on 26 state reading lists and have won, among other honors, the Georgia Children's Book. The School Library Journal calls her debut YA novel, No Way Home, an excellent choice for any young adult collection. Also appropriate for mature middle school readers, and says that fans of mystery, thrillers with puzzles will devour this book. When she's not obsessing over the next plot twist, you can find her watching sports, solving puzzles, and on the road, just 9 more U.S. states to go, or baking the best secret recipe oatmeal cookies you'll ever eat. So welcome, Jody. I'm
Yes,
excited.
I do.
Yes, you do. And you do make the best cookies.
Thank
Let
you.
me just tell you. I've had them and they are amazing. What made you want to be a writer? What started you? Since you wanted to be a code breaker, how'd you end up being a writer?
I had no intention of ever being a writer growing up. I kind of ran away from writing. I mean, I could write. Wrote well. I wrote papers well. They got A's and the whole bit. But it wasn't until college when I didn't know what in the world I wanted to do with my life. I was majoring in psychology and I did not enjoy it. I hated it. I just wanted to talk to people and analyze them and tell them what to do and how to live a better life. But that's not what the courses were about. And so I was at Mizzou. No, I'm sorry. It's not the courses, at least. Maybe the practice is, but not the courses, not getting there. Getting there is really hard. And I was so bored to tears, I figured I can't do this with my life. So when I was at Mizzou, I figured, well, what they do best is journalism. Let me enroll in journalism, which I did. I had no intention of being a reporter or a newspaper writer, but they did have an advertising sequence. And that played right into my strong suit. And that's where I started writing. And the actual act of writing for children came when I was at my first job in advertising. It was paying almost nothing. And I thought, ooh, this is an easy way to make money. I loved books growing up. I could write a picture book and it'll sell and I'll make money. And
no. So how did that go for you?
I have about 30 picture books in a drawer stuffed away somewhere where no one will ever see them. Or, maybe, who knows? But then I just realized that I had way more words in me. I thought I was a picture book author because advertising is short, snappy, to the point, and it's not that easy to translate into kids' books. I had a lot more words in me.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, in your books, you do a great job of weaving themes into your stories. Does this come naturally, or is this something you had to study how to do?
So I'm going back to high school and maybe junior high, which we called middle school then. And there was a session type thing on poetry. And the teacher was saying how this symbolized this and this symbolized that. And the theme of the poem was that. And I'm thinking, why can't this poet just be writing about a cat that they loved? And so I railed against theme. I railed against symbolism. I railed against the whole thing. When I wrote papers, I had to figure out a theme and find some supporting stuff. And I always found it, but I just never bought into the whole idea of theme. And I might have woven theme well into my earlier books, but I actually still didn't buy into theme that much it all started for me. I was in a critique group early in my writing, in my second or third critique group. It's a serious critique group. And there was one author, her name is Cynthia Lord. She's gone on to win, she won the Newbery Honor with her first book, Rules. And this was right before the book was accepted to be published. And she was talking about theme. And then she was talking about writing her next book. And she was starting from a different theme. And I'm thinking, wait, you're starting from a theme and you're going to write a book built around that theme? And that's when it started coming onto my radar that maybe this was a good thing to do. So I might not be answering your question, Heather, but I'm getting there. And so again, in my early books, didn't really think of theme. I think it naturally wove its way in there, but not as much as it could have, and not as much as I would have done it now. And if I had, it would have made them stronger books. So re-ask the question. I'm not sure where I went with
No,
that.
that was perfect. That was perfect.
That's an exact. That's. I think that's a lot of writers start out not appreciating theme as much
They
as,
just want to play.
yeah, you want to just play the writing, and then you find
Yeah.
out the theme is so critical to the whole story. So when you are doing your theme, how do you incorporate? Do you start now? Do you start with a theme, and what themes do you like to work with, to play with?
What I like to do is I like to start with story and characters and setting, your basic three
Mhm.
building blocks of story. So plot, characters, and setting. And somewhere in the middle, or somewhere as I'm brainstorming, all of a sudden a certain topic comes into view. Now, a topic would be like leadership. A topic would be fear. A topic would be persuasiveness, just single
Mhm.
words. And the difference between a topic and a theme is like one of the books I did. One of the themes is bravery is choosing to act within the existence of fear. So bravery could be the topic, but the entire sentence would be more or less the theme. So what I do is I'm just writing the thing. I'm a fast first drafter. Once I first start writing, I can get a first draft done in about 8
That is
weeks
fast.
of about 70,000, 60, 70,000. And it's a mess. It is a total disaster. But I've thought about it for a month or more. And sometimes in that thinking, I will come up with a theme and I will just remember that it's there in the back of my mind. But it's on the revision, on the rewrite. That's when I start weaving theme in. And I know some people, like I said, start with theme. And to me, it's very hard to do because if I were to start with theme, I might draft something that is just kind of convoluted and is so out there with theme that the story isn't
Mhm,
good. And it's
mhm.
first and foremost the story that has to be good. And the theme plays an important role, but it plays a very subdued, almost invisible supporting role. That's what it should play.
That's interesting. That's interesting because I'm the opposite. Like when I have an experience and I think about something, like I have an experience, I'm confronted with a topic, like you say, I'm confronted with a theme, and it makes me want to go explore that theme. And then I create a world that pushes against that theme, or I create a character that feels a certain way, and then an antagonist who feels the opposite way about that theme. And the whole book for me comes from the theme. And so I think it just is how our mind works, right? Like we all are different.
Right.
And so it just is how we do it. But you're right, though. The story needs to be solid for sure. So,
Yeah, for me, theme is kind of like, I mean, if you take like a suit of clothes, like suit material, and you go back, harken back to the criminals in like 1920s, 1930s movies, and they've got a pinstripe
mhm,
suit and they've got this bold pinstripe suit. Um, you don't want the theme to be the bold pinstripes. What you want the theme to be is that suit that might look black or navy from a distance, but if you get up closer, it has a thin pale blue line or pale pink line running through it. And it's like, oh, that makes it more interesting. It's not just a plain navy, plain black suit of clothes.
mhm.
So that's how I like to think of theme too.
So when you're crafting a story, you say you do your first draft, and then how do you identify the themes that you want to explore? And I guess for you, they aren't apparent from the outset. So do they emerge just more organically as you develop the book?
They develop more as I'm developing character, because you go with the two things that the character wants, the thing that they want and the thing that they really want. They want money, but they really want acceptance. So it's kind of a tangible thing that they want and more of an internal thing that they want. So I think it pulls mostly from the internal need, the internal want of the character. I just turned a book into my agent in which the character kind of messed up with her life. And she wants her parents to see her in a different way to allow her to do what she wants to do for her future. Otherwise, she's going to be working at McDonald's, taking a gap year out of high school and before she goes to college to prove that she's responsible. So, with that, my theme is basically respect comes with responsibility. You can't earn respect without being responsible. So, that's how the main theme came through. There's a book that I wrote that is sadly it's with my agent now. She says it's unpublishable right now. She loves it. I love it. She says the market's not right for it, but that's neither
Yeah.
here nor there. Eventually it'll turn around. But the theme for that's probably the strongest theme I've ever written, the strongest follow through I've ever written, is finding life in the face of loss. So this is a kid who has lost his father. He feels like he's losing his friends, and now he's ready to regain his life, to re-enter his life. And that just came from developing the character and not so much the story. The story is still there. The story is about how he is chosen to beta test a video game in real life, which is really it should be a very fun book, but we'll see. Hopefully it'll be out there one of these days. But the lost part is what I focused on when I was trying to weave theme into his story. And I can go ahead and talk about how I went ahead and did
Yeah,
that. Where
please
you
do.
said something.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I do is I first make a list of things let me get the list of things he can lose. And I actually have a handy dandy list right here. I'm just going to read them
Okay.
to you. Things you can lose, just anybody, not necessarily this main character. You can lose a life, friends, you can lose a game, you can lose your standing, you can lose confidence, nerve, respect, you can lose a pet, you can lose your place, you can lose your homework, you can lose a tooth, you can lose a fingernail, you can lose virginity, you can lose items like phones, keys, contact lenses, you can lose your way physically or metaphorically. You can lose your shirt, so to speak. You can lose a debate. You can lose an argument. You can lose a bet. You can lose control. You can lose patience, memory, your mind, temper, train of thought. You can lose a lawsuit, money, election, and you can lose your footing. So that is the list that I came up with in pretty short order. And what I would do is I would pick and choose things that pertained to this character and his story, not just as the story goes, but also back, which is a perfect place to include theme, because your character can have a multitude of backstories, a multitude of things that happened in their life that can shine a light on the way they act. And if you choose something like this character lost, and not necessarily something as big as his father, but maybe he lost a game in the past. Maybe his backstory had to do with the time that he lost Monopoly to his little sister, and it gave him a motivation to move forward. So those little things that add a little bit of depth to story really works well when you're it's not only it works well in the story, it works well to guide you as an author what to choose when there's so many different ways that you can go with pieces of backstory, with little
Mhm.
details and theme.
So when you're picking out
And
backstory, then you're also looking at the theme and seeing which pieces of that backstory are going to fit closer to that theme or project the theme forward, correct?
exactly, yeah. So it's the third book in the Gollywhopper game
Mhm.
series where my editor came to me and said, "This is working really great, but right here, I need a backstory on your character. Why he and his father have this relationship that they do, and why this character is driven to play football in his life." And so the backstory I did had to do with its theme, and I'm not pulling up the theme in my head right now, but it had to do with the fact that his father did play football, tried to play football, but had an injury. And now that's actually part of the theme. The theme was that how to go on once life has slapped you down. But his father played football, was drafted by the NFL, and then sustained an injury that kept him from that and had to rebuild his life and his family. That's a little bit of the backstory I did from theme and from circumstances surrounding what was going on in the book.
So you're looking not only at your main character, but even like some of your side characters to see if they have some theme in their backstory that will fit with your overall theme.
Absolutely. The other characters, they have to be as well rounded as your main character.
Mhm.
You just don't see it on the page. So in your mind, in order to get your dialogue right and to get their actions and what they do with their hands, get that all right, you need to know it as much. So if you can either use your theme to inform their character, either to go along with your main character or to fight against your main character or to just give your main character space to grow, it's going to really
Yeah.
empower you to make a great story and make even stronger
Mhm.
characters. So to me, theme and character go more hand in hand than anything
Yeah.
else.
So we're talking
Mhm.
about theme, but we're also going to talk a little bit about adding layers. And we're kind of doing this already because you're talking about the layers of characters and backstory and everything. So can you explain a little bit about the difference of layers and theme and how theme can play into more of those layers that you're adding to your story?
They're totally
Yeah.
related. So you have your
Hmm.
theme. If you want good explanation of themes, want ideas for themes, the best thing that you can do is to go look at morals of the story from Aesop's
Okay.
fables. And there's themes all over the place. Persuasion is better than force. Slow and steady wins a
Hmm.
race. Never give up. There's always a way. Don't always expect a reward. Those types of things. You can go to movies. When Harry met Sally, it's men and women can't be friends. For risky business, it's sometimes you just have to say what the blank. Um, yeah. So you've got these themes, but what you do to layer them in is, and you have theme and you have story, and then you have all the ideas that you've put down where you can take your theme. And it's just a matter of finding a place where you don't have a good detail, where you've just put a detail in for a placeholder, a detail that is almost a throwaway. And you think, how can I change it so this detail isn't a throwaway?
Mhm.
How perhaps the setting, even what the room looks like, what it's decorated with, what's on the table. How can that be a part of it? In my book, Gollywhopper Games, the theme is something like we have the ability to rise above our circumstances.
Mm.
So if you take the word rise, things that rise, and I made a little list. Yeast rises, a stage platform rises, expectations rise, a hot air balloon rises, status rises, elevator, helicopters. You can rise and shine. You can rise to the occasion. You can ever get a rise out of someone. Cream rises to the top. You can rise to your feet. The sun rises. So I did not use this, but I did use the hot air balloon as part of a scene, an important part of a scene. And I didn't even realize that I was incorporating theme that way. But if he was sitting in his bedroom and he sees the sunrise when he's too tired to get up, the sun would help him rise above what he's feeling. So it's just a matter of taking something inconsequential and adding another piece to it that gives it detail, that gives it depth, that gives it a little more interest. And what the layering can do, what the theme can do, and what your list can do is guide you into doing something like that. The other thing is that you can layer in theme through dialogue.
Okay.
You can have one character who might maybe talk in cliches at times, and the cliches or metaphors could align with your theme. So that's just still another way. So we've got a little bit about setting, we've got a little bit about character, and the plot pretty much rules itself as far as being thematic. Sure. Okay. So if you have the ability to rise above your circumstances. That kind of is a big part of the plot of the
Hmm.
book. That, again, I did not recognize it at the time that that was a theme, but it pretty much is the theme. We've got this kid whose father was arrested for trying to embezzle millions and millions of dollars from the company that's putting on these games that he ends up playing in. And his family has become a pariah in town. So he is not only trying to rise above the fact that his father was falsely accused, but he's trying to rise above his own circumstances. And he's trying to do that by winning the game. And that is kind of just a real blatant use of the theme of the book. Kid readers, I don't think that they necessarily see that. In fact, when I'm reading a book just for fun, I'm not looking for theme. I just know if a book feels fulfilling or if something is going off the rails, I can tell it is, but I'm not even thinking, is there a theme there? Are they following the theme?
Mhm.
It's just to add that little extra bit of flavor, a little bit of salt and pepper, a little bit of basil underneath there that makes I cook a lot, that makes the book sing and it gives it a better taste than it would have been before.
I think whether we realize it or not, we're subconsciously picking up on all of these little clues, right? And books that have very thematic undertones and undercurrents and all of these layers that you've been talking about, I think those for me are the ones that are the most fulfilling because I'm using my entire brain. I'm using my conscious mind and my subconscious mind, and it's all working together. And in the end, when it all comes together, it is very satisfying and it really does resonate.
Totally agree with that. In fact, in my earlier books, I really regret not having done this before because they were very well received, but they could have been just that much more well received had it been for the, who knows, maybe not, but it really could have happened because I like subliminally, unconsciously,
Mhm.
I did weave a lot of this in there, but I could have done more and we can always do more. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the thing.
Right,
You get a book published, it's like, I could have done more,
right.
but
I
it's
think your
out there.
poetry teacher would be proud of you. with with all
I
your
faked it.
theme.
I pretended that they were right. I don't remember who it was, but I pretended that the poetry teacher was right, that all my teachers were right at the time, and I just played their game, but I wouldn't buy into it. And now I'm making kids buy into it. So there you
And
go.
adults too.
Come full circle.
It is it. Um, so there certain types of stories that you think lend themselves more readily to theme, or do you think it works for any kind of story?
It can work for any type of story. I mean, you get this heavy thematic book, Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, which, truth be told, I haven't read the book, but I've seen the stage performance a couple of times. I mean, but that's all about the inequity of the justice
Mhm.
system, and it's played out top to
Mhm.
bottom. And you have books like that, and you have books like The Little Engine That Could. So you've got a picture
Sure.
book that is, I think I can, I think I can. It's believing in
Mhm.
yourself, achieving when you don't think it's possible. And as an author, you might not be able to put as much into a picture book as that, but if you're an author illustrator, you can fill the background with things like ants carrying heavier loads
Yeah.
than they should be able to. Bumblebees aerodynamically should not be able to
Right.
fly. There are bridges that should never have been built. So these little things could be in the background and it can go with the theme in that way. I was thinking about this. Nonfiction is a little bit harder because you have to be precise with your facts. And you can't just suppose things unless you say that somebody else supposed something. But what you can do is what you choose to include. So in nonfiction, what you include can possibly become the theme of whatever it is you are, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
reporting on.
Sometimes in nonfiction, you're finding the theme of that. Like if you're doing a biography, you're finding that theme of that person's life. It may not be the theme you choose, but you're still finding a theme too. So I do think it does work,
Mhm.
especially like in adult biographies where you're really digging deep into that person's life and the theme of their life. So I think it can be really
Yeah,
powerful.
that's it can go from anywhere from the smallest picture book up to the biggest, thickest 1,000 word, a 1,000 page Victor Hugo
Mhm.
novel. Um, it can be in there, and it doesn't matter what type of book you're writing. You can find a way to incorporate theme, whether it's of your own choosing or whether in nonfiction it is because of the subject
Mhm.
itself.
Yeah.
So we're
Okay.
gonna we're gonna spring something on Jody here.
Yes, we are. So, Jody, we're talking about theme. Now, If I give you a theme to play with, can you use it as an example for our listeners to see what you would do with it?
It's a game.
Okay.
Yay. I
Okay.
love
I know
games.
you're very good at games. Okay. So here's the theme that I'm going to have you. Revenge is not always as sweet as you think it will be. How is
Okay.
that
So
one?
let's start. Okay. I'm actually writing this down. I'm writing some keywords down. So we have revenge and we've got not sweet. So the opposite. So revenge, let's start with, there's a lot of things we can play
Mhm.
with. We can start with things that are not sweet, things that are sour. We can start with pickles. We can have a sour attitude. We
Mm,
can have prune face. We can have things that are sour. Um, it's all the foods, but a mood can be
mhm,
sour. And that's a few things for sweet expectations, as far as, all the desserts, sweet nature, a sweetie pie, sweet as sugar. I'm going to repeat myself just because I'm
yep.
brainstorming on the top of my head. A sweetness, sweet and light. So
Also fake
there's
sugar,
more.
sweet and low.
Sweet and low, right? Sweet and low, and that's really good. So so we've got the opposite of sweet is fake sweet
Yeah.
is so, and we've got, and then you go into revenge in that part, and revenge is getting back at somebody. Revenge is trying to make things right. And so, what are some synonyms or some instances of making things right? You can correct your course. You can make a right turn. You can kill somebody and try to make things right. How do you get revenge? You can get revenge at murder. You can get revenge at ruining somebody's reputation. So I would go down the path of how many different ways you can get revenge on somebody. And then I would extrapolate words from that. Actually, a really good resource that I tend to use is called the Free Dictionary. It's freedictionary.com, I believe. And it has a lot of
Mm,
idioms.
okay.
So
Nice.
you just go down the list of idioms for sour. You can go down a list of idioms for sweet. You can go down a list for revenge. Revenge is a dish best served
Yeah.
cold, that type of thing. So I might not have done a really great job here, but I have my thesaurus behind
Mhm.
me. I still like using a book thesaurus, because it can take you from place to place to place, as well as thesaurus.com can
Mhm.
too. But to hold something in my hand, it makes me think a little bit more. Um, so I've got my resources. But that is kind of how I would start, by looking for idioms, looking for synonyms for sweet, for sour, for revenge, for somebody who's revenged has been hurt, probably. So I would go down that path. And there's a lot to play with there. Depending on the story, I would probably try to choose one of those lanes, and which would best reflect what was going on in the story.
I'm coming
Okay.
up with a whole book in my head about like a baker who bakes sweet treats and just murders on the side for revenge,
Yeah,
getting just
or put slivers of glass in there and make the people like cut their throats.
Your favorite poison.
Yeah,
you could do all kinds of things. I mean,
Do
you could
all
go
sorts.
with something very
See, so you
different
can
from that.
start with the theme or you can start with the story and weave the theme in both ways.
Mhm,
Yeah,
right.
I like that.
mhm.
Yeah,
I like that because I'm probably the plotter. Unlike Heather, I come up with the story, but I really like the idea of being able to have a strong theme throughout the story. And so trying to come up with different ideas and brainstorm some things that I can weave back in. And I love the idea of taking small throwaway things and making those important. Um, that's something I think I'll be able to take away and use
Yeah,
in my next
absolutely.
writing project. So I will look at those throwaways in a different light, Jody. That's very helpful.
it's a very easy place to start. And again, I think I said this once, if not twice, if not three times already. It makes your job as a writer easier, because you don't have to think, oh, what can they have on their table? What can they have in their
Hmm.
backpack? Um, if it deals with theme, in fact,
And
yeah,
it gives a lot
I
more purpose to some of those details, and I think that's um,
Absolutely.
I've heard a talk by Linda Sue Park about the details that she puts
yeah,
in, which are incredible, and
And
so it
she
kind of
said, I watched an SCBWI conference with her, and she said this thing, no magic mushrooms, meaning that like
Yes.
everything in your story has a reason for being there,
Mhm.
and it should always be mentioned a couple of times. And I
Yeah.
think it's interesting that, if you are very specific, even in these details, it can just elevate your story. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, Jody,
It
you
is.
mentioned that your earlier works you didn't incorporate this idea quite as much about being thematic or intentionally thematic. In your experience, have you seen a difference between the way readers have responded to stories that have these multiple layers of themes that are intentional, or do you think that it has enhanced the reading experience for your readers to have this, or do you think it might make it more challenging to navigate a story that has theme in it?
I would love to say that the response has been like, "Oh my gosh, your thematic thing is great." But my hope in my books, I is to for the theme to be almost invisible, just to give you that undercurrent of a little more depth. So I have not had a response in that regard. I just hope that, like I said, that they take away that, oh, this book is well rounded, it's done well. And I don't read for theme, but I can tell when it's there.
Right.
So people have said, yeah, love this book, but they've said that about other books too. But again, theme was probably there. I just didn't know it. And the reason theme was probably there in my earlier books is because I often start to borrow a movie term, a log line. So just a one liner about what the book's about. I don't have one handy for it with me, but it's basically it talks a little bit about the character, a little bit about the plot, and a little about a twist or some sort of other given circumstance. You can look up a lot of log lines. In fact, I'm going to just sway from this a little bit. There's movie websites that I use to really sell me on theme. And can you put
Oh,
links?
yes, we will.
Give
Yeah,
We'll put them in.
definitely.
Okay. So script notes episode number 403. It's about a filmmaker who talks about theme and talks about theme in terms of the movie Finding Nemo.
Mhm.
Oh,
And it is just brilliant. And that is what got me on this trajectory to begin with. Film is a whole different medium and a whole different way of doing things, but it's a fast, easy study, faster and easier than reading a whole book and trying to study a whole
Yeah.
book than anything else. So if you're looking for themes in a fast way, besides,
Mhm.
picking out a book and reading it and finding a good one, is to watch movies for themes because they do that quickly and they do it well.
Okay.
The good movies
Great
do.
tip. I love that.
yeah.
We will absolutely put that in our show notes so our listeners can take a look, see what themes you can find. I think I'm going to be watching a movie maybe tonight and seeing if I can find some themes in it. So,
Well, if you love, like I said, Harry Met Sally, Risky Business, easy themes to find. But the interesting thing to do is to see if you're watching a movie, you already know the theme. See if the director and the writer played it out, or see if how they could have played it out maybe even
mhm.
further and didn't even realize
Yeah.
it. So it's probably a really good exercise. I've never done it before, but I just thought of it, so I might
Yeah.
have to do that
We'll compare
myself.
notes later.
Yeah, there we go.
Cool. So you've given some advice to the authors. Where can we learn more about you and your work?
You can always find me at jodifeldman.com. Just I have other interviews online. You can just, look those up in a search engine of your
Great.
search engine of choice. And also, I am happy to answer questions through
Oh,
email. If anybody
awesome.
has something burning, not it may take a little bit of time, but I will get back to
It's
you.
very generous of you. I'm sure our
That
listeners
is.
will
Mm,
appreciate that.
thank you.
Make it a good question, though. Make it something that you might not be able to find out on your own, because half of learning to write, half of writing well is to do the deep digs yourself
Hmm.
and to be pondering things yourself. Because the more I do that, the better examples I come up with, the better plot lines I come up with, the deeper the character. Yeah, just make it a really good one if you have a question.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Jody.
Oh, it was my
Thank you.
pleasure. Thanks for
This was
having me.
really fun. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Wayward Writers.
Let's connect. Find us at waywardwriters.com, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
See you next time. Conquer your path.